Good afternoon. I'd like to give you an update on the last few days. We had a very busy 5 days over the holiday, and we had a couple of violent deaths and some police-involved shootings. So I'd like to give you some background information on all of those. First of all, Andrew Brown, 25, was fatally stabbed on November 21st at 6:40 at a home on the 2900 block of West Vliet Street during a family argument. A 15-year-old relative of Brown is in custody. Secondly, Clemon, C-L-E-M-O-N, Ferguson, common spelling, age 18, was shot during an armed robbery at a barbershop on November 21st at 11:45 at 2541 North Martin Luther King Drive. The death was ruled self-defense by the DA's office and is not being counted as a homicide for UCR purposes. Ferguson was shot by a 26-year-old customer as Ferguson and another armed man were committing a robbery at the business. The second armed robbery suspect, aged 21, is in custody and is facing charges of felony murder. Number 3. Jesse Brown, age 34, was shot November 22nd at 1:13 a.m. at a suspected drug house in the 2100 block of South 14th Street in what appears to be a drug-related robbery. We are investigating a number of leads in this case, and no one is as yet in custody. Leonardo Marin, M-A-R-I-N, all right, this is the fourth death, was shot by his friend on November 23rd at 11:45 p.m. inside a car in the 1800 block of South 32nd Street. Marin was inside a vehicle with the suspect when the suspect fired a gun outside the vehicle and then apparently accidentally shot his friend inside the vehicle. An 18-year-old is in custody. The suspect is facing charges of reckless homicide and endangering safety by use of a dangerous weapon. All right, we had 2 officer-involved shootings over the holiday weekend. A man was shot at 4:02 p.m. in the 3800 block of South 1st Street by a Milwaukee police officer after the suspect was alleged to have committed an armed robbery earlier at 17th and Layton. Daniel Kleinman, that's K-L-E-I-N-M-A-N-N, age 28, had met a man he knows in the area of 17th and Layton to sell him car parts. According to the victim, Kleinman was armed with a handgun and robbed him, then driving away in his car, subsequently crashing it at 3rd and Tripoli. Police officer Sean Pecoraro, P-E-C-O-R-A-R-O, responded to the area when he heard the report of an armed robbery over the police radio. Multiple citizen witnesses flagged the officer down and directed him towards where the robbery suspect had fled. Officer Pecoraro was in uniform and in a marked squad. When the officer encountered Kleinman, the actions of the suspect led the officer to reasonably believe that his life was in danger, and he discharged his weapon, killing Kleinman. Kleinman of Germantown is a convicted felon who is wanted for escape. A gun has not been recovered at this time. Officer Pecoraro is 39 years old and has 15 years of service on the Milwaukee Police Department. As is procedure, he was placed on administrative duty as the Milwaukee Police Department and the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office review the incident. We had a second incident. This was a shots fired by an officer. On November 25th at 2:10 p.m., Milwaukee police received multiple citizen telephone calls reporting there was a man with a gun in the area of 14th and Center. As a MARC squad searched the area for suspects, officers spotted a group of people at 17th and Locust, one of whom fit the description of the suspect with the gun. These individuals all ran upon the arrival of the police. Officer Joseph Warren, W-A-R-R-E-N, who was in uniform, got out of his squad and ran after the suspect, who had been described as having the gun. When Officer Warren caught up to the suspect raised a gun at the officer. Fearing for his life and the lives of others in the area, Officer Warren discharged his weapon. No one was struck. The weapon turns out to be a facsimile weapon, and it was recovered at the scene. The suspect, who was 14, was arrested. He has a previous arrest for robbery from earlier this year. Officer Warren remains on full duty. He's 37 years old with 14 years of service at the Milwaukee Police Department. He is assigned to the Neighborhood Policing Bureau. I'll offer you some context and perspective. According to our data, since 2007, so it's 2007 through 2012, year to date, deadly force has been used by the Milwaukee Police Department 15 times. Since 2002, for the last 10 years, the Milwaukee Police Department has used deadly force 34 times in the last 10 years. During the last 5 years, 9 officers have been shot at. 9 officers have been shot and wounded. 21 officers have been shot at. In terms of confiscated facsimile firearms, so far this year, we have confiscated 62 BB guns, 68 facsimile guns, and 35 pellet guns. According to the Law Enforcement Memorial Foundation, the number of police officers killed in 2011 increased 29% compared to 2010, and it's a 24% increase overall since 2007. Firearms have been used 88% of the time to kill officers. We have on this desk, believe it or not, there are pairs of weapons here, and authentic ones are paired with facsimile ones. You are free to take a look at them or inspect them more closely when we're done. But I think you'll get a sense of how extraordinarily authentic looking facsimile weapons are. So obviously, I'm somewhat limited in the questions I can answer here, but I'll endeavor to answer some of your questions.
Chief, can we go back to the incident on Saturday where involved the fatal shooting? When the officer, I guess the question comes to mind, the car was crashed at 3rd and Tripoli, and often the officer was flagged down by citizens. Did the officer ever have a foot pursuit with this individual, or was he simply in his squad car when he came about this individual? And exactly what type of interaction did they have before shots were actually fired?
We had to choose our words carefully and did it with the consultation with the DA's office, but I can verify there was a foot pursuit. The officer got out of his car and chased the suspect. They did have an interaction, but obviously as this case is going to be investigated by the DA, I'm not going to go into great detail at this time, but there was interaction between the suspect and the officer.
And was this individual shot in the front or shot in the back? What's the proximity and how?
Well, as we said, you know, in the statement we crafted with the DA's office, and let me go back and read it again carefully, the actions of the suspect led the officer to reasonably believe his life was in danger. All those facts will come out at an appropriate time, and I will leave it to the DA's office to issue their finding.
Was there any weapon found on Mr. Clemon?
Well, as I said moments ago, no weapon was recovered. A weapon was reported by the victim, and that information was put out over the radio to the officer, but no weapon was recovered at the scene. We also have independent witnesses who report having seen one. Now, I'm not going to say anybody's right, but there was a lot of independent verification of the officer's version of events.
Did those witness descriptions of the weapon match the description given by the man who said he was robbed?
Well, there was not a great deal of description given. Somebody's been robbed, man has a gun. It wasn't so much a description of what the gun looks like. It was, we have a man with a gun who committed a robbery. That's essentially the information the officer was operating under.
Chief, is it illegal to report somebody having a gun if they don't have a gun?
Well, it's not illegal to make a mistake, okay? I mean, it's illegal to file a false police report, but I think you'll find that it is not uncommon for people to make errors in what they perceive or see. So,
was this person arrested? The person that was being robbed, was he taken into custody?
No, he's been fully cooperative, and he's the victim of a robbery.
You mentioned that the suspect had a previous criminal record, it sounds like had escaped. Did the officer know anything about the suspect's background at the time?
No.
Thank you very much for coming, everybody.
One additional question, Chief. Before the individual crashed his car, was the officer in interaction with him prior to him or crashing the car, or after? Did this person crash first and then the officer?
He had already fled when the officer got. The officer engaged in a foot pursuit of a fleeing man.
Question about the facsimile weapons up here. Is that an increasing problem that you guys are seeing more of, either the facsimile weapons or younger offenders? I mean, you mentioned this person was 14 years old.
Well, we did do some preliminary data analysis about a year ago, and the data was indicating to us we were seeing increasingly younger offenders whose first arrest was for robbery. This individual's first arrest was for a prior robbery. I don't have data on how many facsimile weapons are used in robberies, but they are used, and as you can see, in an armed encounter with a suspect, it's impossible to tell the difference between a facsimile weapon and the real thing. And in those contexts, the officers really don't have time to guess.
Chief, can you put in perspective, people may see this, and we understand that your officers have a very difficult job, but the word used, he feared for his life. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about the split-second decisions that your officers have to go through when they are faced, in general terms, with someone that they believe? I mean, you can be fearful of your life with more than just a weapon being shown or not being shown. Can you talk about the general terms of what your officers, when you say fearful of your life, that entails more than just a weapon. Can you,
these are, for all intents and purposes, combat situations. And when an officer is engaged with a suspect who has been reported to be armed or who is displaying a weapon, the officer has very little time to make a judgment as to what to do. I mean, these are basically combat situations. They have to weigh a number of variables in an extremely short period of time. The dangers to others by them using their weapon, the dangers to others by them not using their weapon, the degree of threat. I mean, they have to process extraordinary amounts of information in a very brief time. Some of you have gone to the academy and engaged in some of our shoot, don't shoot training. I'd welcome any of you who are interested in following up on another day. Certainly you'll get a sense that we try to, as well as we can, create a stressful environment that bombards the officer's senses in a training environment to try to prepare them for having to make these decisions under duress. But it's fair to say that no matter how much and how authentic you try to make the training, it's impossible to completely replicate the stress and the anxiety and the fear that enters into a circumstance in which you believe your life or the lives of others are at risk unless you take direct action. And so certainly all of these decisions go into play, but I think the reason I gave you the 10-year data was just to demonstrate this is overall, regardless of the amount of violent crime the city experiences or its overall homicide rate, the use of deadly force by officers in this city is still a very rare event. And far more restraint is used than deadly force. And it's, of note to me that in the last 5 years we've given out over 70 life-saving awards. Over those 5 years we've had 10 uses of deadly force. I mean, our officers strive to honor their responsibilities to protect life as much as they can. but there are circumstances in which they have to make these critical judgments.